that back. Marching down the card now, let us talk about the co-main event in the women's flyweight division. Valentina Shevchenko successfully defends her women's flyweight title by defeating Taila Santos via split decision. The Bullet, Shevchenko, earns a 48-47 and a 49-46 from two of the judges. Santos gets a 48-47 of her own. So, Omar, let me toss this over to you first. First question, obviously, do you think that Shevchenko is the rightful winner of this fight and retains her belt, or did you see it differently?
I was struggling with this one, to be honest, because I'm a huge Shevchenko fan, so I know I probably have some bias towards her in the first place. I will also say that Santos did a really good job of taking her down and keeping position. Where I think the conversation starts going to is we keep going back to what makes a fight or a round winnable, right? Is it the damage that's caused, or is it the control by itself? Because Santos was trying to find submissions here and there, but there wasn't really a ton of damage that was being done by Santos. And I feel like they kept saying that it was the head clash that caused that black eye to form. But Shevchenko was milking that eye. I mean, she was punching hard shots from the back, from her back, I should say, and landing them straight into that, like digging them into the eye. There was purpose to what she was doing while she was on her back, and at no point was she ever really, under the chin when it came to a submission win for Santos. So it was very, very difficult to score. I will say this, 49-46 is nonsense. I don't think that was at all the case. I definitely think it was 48-47, no matter how which way you scratch it. But, I mean, regardless of what you feel about the fight, Taila Santos has given Shevchenko a run for her money more than anybody has in years. So I give her credit for that 100%, but Shevchenko broke that girl's face. That girl's whole face is destroyed right now. She needs surgery for it.
Yeah, orbital, right?
So, yeah. So I'm curious to see what Mark's take is, but I really can't give you a definite answer as to who won that fight because it was super, super close.
All right, Mark, what are your thoughts? Do you think that Shevchenko is the rightful winner and retaining her belt?
Yeah, so we're talking scorecards again.
Once again.
I don't think this was a controversial result.
Nice.
Like, heat of the moment, I'll admit, I wasn't sure. I knew Valentina won 4 and 5, and I knew that I had felt round 2 was very tough to score. So I was like, I wonder if Valentina clearly won that round 2, in which case this decision will work out, or if maybe Taila had an argument. And I am happy to tell you that I rewatched, and Taila Santos absolutely does not win round 2. And that the judges, well, at least 2 of the judges, got it right. Valentina is winning round 2 before it hits the mat. And when it does, Taila Santos does nothing. Nothing. She just lays there. The choke attempts and neck cranks that people are thinking of, they're not in this round. There is nothing that she does in this round other than lay on top. There's no back take. There was nothing in round 2. I think we're all guilty of this, but I think sometimes that what people do when things like this happen is that, like, round 1 had these back takes and attempts at chokes. Round 3 had these back takes and attempts at chokes. And round 2, she's on top. And I feel like in that round 2 sometimes when you're watching live, your brain almost stops scoring because you're like, man, Santos is on top. Like, we'll see if Valentina can get up. And your brain just goes into this mush where it's like, well, she was on top. She must have taken it. And then round 3 comes and you see more back takes and you're like, man, it must be 3-0. But, like, if you really focused on that round 2, it's very much not 3-0. And I think that just tends to happen. But Taila was laying there, and Valentina is landing like a little flurry of 5 short punches to the head. Then Taila's laying there some more, and Valentina's framing out and landing a nice elbow from her back across. Then Taila's laying there more, and Valentina's pushing her away and landing a right straight up the middle from bottom. Like, all of the scoring on the ground was coming from Valentina, and Valentina was winning the round before it hit the ground. So unless you're giving a round solely from laying, which you should not be doing, Taila does not win that round, and there's not really a great argument for it. So to me, this was not a controversial result. 2, 4, 5 were clearly Valentina rounds for me. And I'll be honest, I don't hate the 49-46. I thought round one was pretty damn close too. I think
Round one was
I
close.
think I give it to Santos, but Valentina landed like 20 of those punches that Omar was just referring to when she's laying on her back, and they were hard. Like, I know we're conditioned to think like, oh, those punches don't really matter, but it's because normally they're not hard. Those were fucking hard. So like, you kind of have to credit them. So I don't even think the 49-46 was crazy, but I scored the fight for Valentina for sure. I'm glad that she walked away with the belt. I do give credit to Santos because, of course, she brought it to her. She put Valentina in some situations that we don't normally see her in.
Yep.
Who knows how much that clash of heads did change the fight. Obviously, that was unfortunate. But then again, we did find out after the fight that Valentina apparently went in with a pretty bad foot injury, which is why she didn't bust out her normal victory dance. And honestly, I'm not surprised because from jump, I thought Valentina looked a little bit off. I couldn't put my finger on what looked off.
She wasn't bouncy.
Is that I was kind of thinking that, so maybe that's it because I was like, she looks very stationary.
Yep.
So maybe that's exactly what it was. So I'm curious what that fight looks like without the injury. Maybe it's not even that close, but either way, props to Santos for making it interesting. No one has done that for a while here. And props to Valentina for being the champ that she is and gutting out 4 and 5 to make sure she walked out of there with that belt.
Yeah, man. I mean, at this point, Shevchenko is coming dangerously close to almost being able to say that she's clearing out women's flyweight. Because I'm looking at the roster, guys, and just we're about to talk about what's next for these two ladies, and thinking about the champ. Where does she go from here, guys? In terms of her next opponent, she said, I believe, in her post-fight interview that she just wants to keep going. Bring up another contender, and she'll take them on. So, Mark, let me throw it over to you first. Who do you think should fight Shevchenko next for the belt?
So it's funny because I actually think there are some possible fresh contenders. You have Manon Fior fighting Jessica Andrade. If obviously she's beaten Andrade already, but if Manon Fior wins that fight, that could be a solid fight. You have Alexa Grasso and Viviane Araujo fighting. Whoever comes out of that looks pretty good, and neither of them has fought Valentina. I don't think, unless I'm blanking. Yeah, no, neither of them has fought
I don't think
Valentina.
so.
And then you even have Misha Tate, where if she beats Lauren Murphy, she's going to be right in the mix all of a sudden, and obviously she's a name. So there actually are maybe even more options than usual at 125 all of a sudden. Not saying any of these people are necessarily going to beat Valentina, but there's more options that, if you're marketing Shevchenko versus Tate, it'll do all right. Same thing, if Fior looks really good against Andrade, people are going to be excited to see that one. Grasso and Araujo probably not quite as much. But there's options. Personally, I'm just excited because people being Valentina and some others, are actually speaking the words again of her going to 135, which kind of went away for a while, and it seems to be back, and I want to see her try to be double champ, 100%. Like I said last week, I think she could beat either Nunes or Pena, and I would love to see that actually happen. Granted, if Nunes beats Pena, we're probably going to have to see a trilogy first, who knows, and then maybe Valentina defends it against one of those girls first. But if she goes and tries 135 next, I'm here for it.
Love it. Omar, who do you think would be the toughest opponent for Shevchenko right now, looking at the landscape of women's flyweight?
I mean, realistically, I think Manon Fior kind of presents a fresher challenge. It's hard to say who's a tough challenge for Shevchenko because she turns everybody away. Right? I wouldn't have even said Santos was going to be that effective in the first place, having watched that fight, even with the takedowns and stuff like that. And I know, again, we've been talking about control versus damage, but the reality is, she took down Valentina for quite some time. She controlled Valentina, regardless of the fact that she didn't do anything with it. And we can talk about that for the scorecards and debate that, but that's a feat in and of itself. People don't really take Valentina down or control her on the ground. The last person to really do something like that was Amanda. The last person to really try some shit like that was what's her name? The girl who just beat Amanda. Wow, that's fucking
Juliana Pena.
Pena?
Thank you.
Jennifer Maia actually got her down a couple times, but
okay.
do that much.
But Valentina is not one to just be taken down at will on a regular basis, right? So there's definitely something to be said about Santos and the challenge that she presented that I don't think any one of us really gave her credit for or really expected to happen. And I think that's kind of the same thing with Fior is we've seen Chukagian in the way that she fights. We've seen her against Valentina, and I don't really think she presents anything new that's going to make Valentina struggle, frankly. But I think Fiora is a fresh opponent, a fresh matchup, a fresh puzzle to solve. And I think that if we're talking about, somebody who has, I guess, the best chance at fighting her, I think at this point it would be her. But, I mean, it's like trying to race Usain Bolt. It's like you're going for second at that point. You know what I mean? You're going for second.
Yeah, man. What about Santos? You got a name for Santos real quick?
Well, so right now, Mark alluded to it. The fight between Caitlin Chukagian versus Manon Fior is out because I'm assuming Caitlin Chukagian is got an injury of some kind or something like that. So Fiora at this point will be fighting Jessica Andrade, who's stepping in. And so based on the timeline, I wouldn't be mad at seeing Taila Santos versus Chukagian. I'm assuming Chukagian probably needs a little bit to heal up. Santos just fought. I doubt Chukagian is going to get the winner of Fior versus Andrade. She could get the loser. I guess that probably you could do that as well. But I think what probably makes sense before that is Santos versus Chukagian, and then the winner of that fight could probably fight for the belt at that point next, potentially.
Mark, you got a name?
Yeah, I was going to say the same exact thing. I think that obviously Tyler's going to be out a bit, but I think you gotta at this point put her in there with someone who's right at the top of the division and see how she stacks up after what she just was able to show in that fight. So I think Chukagian checks that box. I imagine they're going to probably be ready at similar times, although I don't know how severe Chukagian's injury is. But, yeah, I'd like to see that one.
Okay, cool, guys. Let's keep marching down